Wow, I can't see anyone thanks to this light, but I assume there's still people here. They haven't run away. Like many of you, I went through school. My guitar doesn't agree with that. I went through school in the 1980s when General Zia-ul-Haq was in power. And the school I went to was influenced by his policy of Islamization. The school was Aitchison College. And in that school, I saw the transformation of, that was brought about by his policies. Our school tended towards what I consider today to be more or less a fascist disciplinarian school. And as I went through that schooling, my intellect, my being, it rebelled against the extreme discipline that was enforced upon us. It rebelled against many of the ideas that were being spoon-fed to us. It rebelled against the entire culture of conformity. I wanted to be, I didn't fit in. I wanted all of that to break. I felt that it was stifling my creativity. I felt that it was stifling my personality. But that was the extent of my understanding of the social processes of which I was only a small part. When I graduated from Aitchison College, believe it or not, I'm a PhD today, I teach, I got the worst result in my A-levels in the history of that school. In A-levels, I got an O-F-O. O meant you were on the ordinary level, F meant you failed, you were not even O-levels, and so on. And my friends used to joke with me and they used to say, Taimur, क्या result आया है? और मैं कहता था, उफ़ो, फिर वही सवाल पूछ लिया. So, but, you know, I did my A-levels privately, got a okay result, and I went to college in America. And there I got the opportunity to look at my society from the outside in. And you know, as I began to look at Pakistan, as I began to look at my own life, as I began to look at the trajectory of where I was going, I began to feel more and more ashamed. I'm not ashamed to admit that today, but I did. About myself as well. What was my life supposed to be? Where was I heading? I grew my hair out. I kept a dadi. I used to wear torn jeans with lots of writing on them and so on and so forth. I became your typical, you know, bohemian sort of person. I picked up the guitar and I started singing. One day, I was at the airport coming back to Pakistan, still a college student, with my long hair, with my guitar on my shoulder. And I met with someone I really admired. I won't take his name. So we sat together on the plane and he was talking to me and he said, Taimur, ये जो तुम सब बातें कर रहे हो, दुनिया तब्दील कर देनी, ये कर देना है, वो कर देना है, इनकलाब लेकर आना है, वगैरह वगैरह. I became quite inspired by, and still am, revolutionary ideas. He said, no, this is not, this is, my view on this is, that, you know, if you just lead a good life, you take care of your wife, you take care of your children, you take care of yourself, that's more than enough. That's more than enough to change the world. And because I admired this person so much, it really put me into a conundrum, into a dilemma. I thought, shayad ye banda theek baat kar raha hai. Aur main, you know, I'm chasing a utopian dream. And then there were all these people who said to me, कि Pakistan में तो तब्दीली नहीं आ सकती. Pakistan is a very conservative society, and the kind of ideas that you're talking about socialism, you're talking about communism, you're talking about Marxism, you're talking about social revolution, you're talking about all the things associated with that. And just look at the history of Pakistan. It's being dominated by military dictatorships. It's dominated by right-wing political parties. It's dominated by big landlords and big capitalists with huge amounts of money. It's dominated by imperialism. It's dominated by a culture which is deeply, deeply patriarchal. How do you expect to change any of this? In fact, what you're going to end up doing is you're only going to end up ruining your own life. You're going to ruin your own life chances and so on. How are you going to make this happen? How are you even going to earn a living? And to be perfectly honest with you, all these things were deeply troubling to me at that particular point in time. I didn't know how I was going to manage any of this. I, honestly speaking, still don't know how I'm going to manage the rest of it. But the part that I have managed, I'll tell you a little bit about that. At the very outset, I took up a job at the Lahore School of Economics. I started teaching there. One of my students from that period is sitting in the audience. And my parents said to me कि तैमूर जो भी करना है अपने पैरों पे खड़े होके करना है. Don't expect that you will get a handout from your parents and you can survive on that. So I took my cook's cycle and I used to cycle to the Lahore School of Economics from my home every day. And I used to wear one shirt when I used to cycle, and I used to take that shirt off and wear another one because it was full of sweat by the time I got to university. And then I taught my classes. And after teaching my classes, I got myself a little motorbike, which I still have. And I started to travel all over Pakistan. On public transport, obviously. On wagons, on tractors, on trains, on buses, on foot, however I could. And began to learn about the people of Pakistan. At that time, I admit that I was a bit of an ultra-leftist. I only used to wear Balochi chappals, and I'd been wearing them for 5 years, and unme se keel nikal rahe the, phir bhi maine parwah nahi ki. I used to wear phate hue kapde and so on and so forth, and today some of the people who, like Sarah sitting over here, saw me wearing a coat and said, "What are you doing wearing a coat? This is not you." But anyway, as I traveled through the Punjab and as I traveled through Sindh and also at that time through NWFP, now Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan, I was deeply humbled and moved by the lives of ordinary people. I didn't know how I could change their circumstances. I didn't know what I could do for them in their lives. But I really wanted to. At that time, being a bit of an ultra-leftist, I had given up playing the guitar. I thought, ये bourgeois काम है, elite लोगों का काम है, ये मैंने नहीं करना. फ्लूट बजाने की मैंने थोड़ी सी ट्राई की थी. मैंने सोचा ये कोई प्रोलेटारी किस्म का इंस्ट्रूमेंट है, ये बजाया जा सकता है. But for 7 years, I stopped playing the guitar, except sometimes I'd take my guitar to class and I'd play for my students a couple of songs that became quite popular with my students, etc. But things began to change very quickly. You know, I was listening to the previous speaker on compassion and on aesthetics, and it dawned upon me as well that yes, people are motivated by economic interests. They are motivated by a desire to change their lives, but they're also motivated by an appeal to the heart. And that appeal can come only through, it doesn't come through merely through abstract theory. It comes when that theory takes flesh and blood in the form of an appeal, in the form of music, in the form of literature, in the form of theater, in the form of film, and in many other forms. So I, with one of my students and my wife, we were in London. I was doing my PhD when the lawyers' movement began. And we were participating in all the protests and the strikes, building a solidarity movement in London, consolidating that movement. उस वक्त media blackout भी हो गया था पाकिस्तान के अंदर after this imposition of emergency. And during the summers, while I was on holiday and I was back in Pakistan, I was participating every Thursday in the lawyers' movement. And in these marches and in these movements, what we were doing, aside from leading very rhythmic slogans, was we were singing songs. We were reviving the ideas of Habib Jalib and Faiz Ahmed Faiz. We were talking about the progressive writers movement again. We were talking about their poetry and so on. And when the media was banned, we of course began to also agitate for the restoration of the freedom of the press. And some of the press representatives came to us and said, यार ये जो तुम लोग गाने कर रहे हो, demonstrations वगैरह में, ढोल बजाते हो, कभी गाने करते हो वगैरह वगैरह, why don't you record this? Why don't you come to Pakistan and record an entire album? I said, fine, take it, let's give it a shot. So in the summer of 2008, they paid for my plane ticket to come back to Pakistan and to record the songs that we'd been playing at all these demonstrations. And that's how our album Umeed-e-Seher was put together. Now at first I thought, okay, when we started to record these songs, honestly speaking, we thought we'd put it out on the internet, and if we got like 500-600 hits, wouldn't that be absolutely fantastic? Wouldn't that be great? 500-600 people will have heard our songs. Well, won't that be great? But we discovered very quickly that as soon as we put our material out on the internet, hundreds of thousands of people started to watch it. and they started to listen to our message and they were inspired by it. The mainstream media began to play it. And the pinnacle of our achievement perhaps was the fact that when the lawyers' movement marched out all the way from Karachi to Islamabad to restore the judiciary, but I think the movement was much broader than that. Of course, the lawyers were interested in the restoration of the judiciary, but many others were interested not merely in the restoration of the judiciary, but were interested more broadly in the end to military dictatorship and bringing in democratic rule in Pakistan, a democratic regime in Pakistan. The pinnacle of our achievement was that the lawyers' movement itself requested that Laal, the band that I had set up, come and play at the dharna, come and play in Islamabad to commemorate that movement. Of course, that didn't happen the way it was meant to happen. We were there in Islamabad, we were flown into Islamabad to sort of make sure that we didn't get caught in the various obstacles and barriers that were placed along the highway, etc. We were waiting in Islamabad for the march, but of course the march, by the time it reached Jhelum, hundreds of thousands of people involved in it, by that time the government acceded to the demands of the march. So we nonetheless played the concert in Islamabad without the march, just with people from Islamabad. But what happened as a result of that entire experience were a number of things. It took me back to that journey that I was taking in the plane when I was sitting with my friend who said, you know, it's enough to just take care of your own family and so on. And it brought to my mind the fact that this is my family. My family is not just restricted to my immediate blood relations. My family is my society. My family are the people that have made me who I am. My family is, I am today, what I am today, I am because of all of you. What I am today is because of Pakistan. What I am today is because of my own country and my own society. And I owe it to my people. I owe it to my people and I owe it to my society. And not just, by the way, to the schools and colleges and universities that have educated me, but to the common working people also that keep this country running, that build the institutions with their bare hands, including this one. जो मेहनत कश लोग हैं, वो भी मेरी society का हिस्सा हैं. So I owe it to all of them to work for their emancipation, to work for the betterment of their lives. And I can do this through my activism. I can do this through my work as an academic, and I do this through my work as a musician. I play, the songs that I compose and I play are mostly from the poetry of Habib Jalib and Faiz. But initially, I was inspired by many singers and artists from the West. One of the singers and artists that I was enormously inspired by is Tracy Chapman. And so what I'm going to do today is sort of exceptional. I'm going to play for you it's called Talking About a Revolution. Talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. Don't you know? Talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. Oh, people gonna rise up and get what's theirs. Oh, people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Oh, don't you know about it? Run, 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 run. I said you better run, 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 run. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn. We're talking about a revolution going on. And finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution going on. We're talking about a revolution while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sound. Where is your clapping, people? Don't you know, talking about a revolution sound. Off we going. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. I said, talking about a revolution. Talking about a revolution. Talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper.